Welcome back to the Guardian Angel Ministries Humanitarian Emergency Services Emergency Pet Sheltering Training. This is module number 2, and where we're going to talk about the facility and site selection. How do we choose the right place for our shelter? We're going to start off our discussions by talking about 3 types of pet shelters. There's animal-only shelter, or there could be a co-located, pet-friendly shelter, or a cohabitated shelter. Let's unpack each of these just a little bit. So the animal-only shelter. In this particular case, the care of the animals falls completely on the sheltering team because there's nobody else with the animals, so the sheltering team has to take care of them. Now you'll notice we have a big red stop sign here. This is not our first choice. Now we may, in many situations, end up having some animals that show up in the shelter that don't have owners with them, but we really try to avoid that at all costs if we can. The next type is a co-located or pet-friendly shelter. And this is where the family and the pets are in the same building. They may be in different rooms or in adjacent buildings or in nearby facilities, or maybe even our trailer, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We have a trailer that is set up to allow us to shelter animals in the trailer for smaller numbers or to just get started. In this case, in the co-located pet-friendly shelter, the responsibility for the care of the animals falls on the animal's owner. And this helps us as the sheltering team because we're going to require fewer daily care staff. Now, the sheltering team is still going to be busy. They're going to be responsible for registration. They'll certainly have some responsibility for cleaning and check in and check out. There are certainly still enough tasks. We're just not going to need quite as many people in this situation. And this is going to be what we really always hope to be the majority of the shelters that we operate. Hence, the big thumbs up, better choice number 1. And we know for sure that a happy pet is a healthy pet, and this type of shelter really supports the human-animal bond, which is overall healthier for the animals, and by the way, is healthier for the family. Both the animals and the family have typically gone through a lot because of the emergency itself. Now, there are a couple challenges. One, it's a little harder to control the environment in this type of situation, and it's a little bit harder to protect the animals from intruders and theft. Some of that is caused just because there's so many people coming and going. So, we have to really stay posted to who's going into the animal area itself. And then we have a cohabitated shelter. In a cohabitated shelter, the owners are housed in the same area as their pets. And a section of floor space is assigned to a family, and they configure it how they see fit. But we have to take into consideration that it requires about 180 square feet per family of 4 plus their pets. So we have to think about that as we go looking at floor plans. And we also have to remember that families with pets need to be separated from the families without pets. So this is a good choice. The thumb's a little bit down, but it's not often possible. But this is still better than the first shelter that we talked about when we began this section. Now, what are some things that you think that we have to consider prior to choosing a location for and then setting up an emergency pet shelter? Here are some of the things. The type of sheltering. Which of those shelters that we spoke about are we actually going to be doing? What animals? If we have any idea at all what the animals are, many times when we show up, animals are already there, so we have an idea. But again, any idea we can get of the animals will help us. What are the types of facilities that are available, and what is their accessibility? Also, what do they have for available amenities? What's the floor type? We'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. Are there any needed modifications to the facility? Modifications are pretty difficult when you consider that in most cases we're going into an area and during time of emergency. And usually by the time we're being called into the area, there are probably also people already in the shelter that need sheltering for their pets. But again, not out of the question. And what's the layout of that facility or any facility that we're looking at? So location, when we're talking about location, is it handy and is it accessible? We want people to be able to access it. We need it to be easy for volunteers and the public to find. And it needs to be close to the evacuation routes and well-serviced roads. 24/7 access permitted is a real big question for us. We really need to be able to access the facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if our event goes on that long. Is it convenient for owners to visit? If it's a situation where the owners aren't going to be at the exact same site, is it convenient for them, especially when we want them to be taking care of their pets? Is there adequate parking? That's another biggie. Where are we going to put all of the vehicles? And then is the facility able to be secured? You know, we want the facility to be secured so we can keep the animals and also the people in the facility safe. So what's the capability to secure the facility? As far as the size, we know that it is better to err on the side of too large a facility rather than one that is too small. It needs to be large enough for the estimated number and variety of animals requiring shelter. And the rule of thumb for dogs and cats we have to think about is the stack of crates is about 12 to 16 square feet, so it's 3 or 4 feet by 4 feet, plus there needs to be an access aisle of 3 to 4 feet. And we need to have ample clearance or walls to be able to separate the dogs and cats and others. Now we can, in fact, use cardboard, we can use blankets to separate. But those, again, are all things that we need to think about as we're preparing to set up the facility, or, yes, even when we're setting it up. Is there an isolation area if that's needed? Again, remember that pets get stressed just like humans do, and this is an emergency, so we may have to separate animals. They may be in a situation where they're unsafe to have them with other animals. So we may need that isolation area. And then we can't forget that we have to have an area for registration and administration types of things as well. The building itself, and we have to look at the design. Is it an open air building or a closed building? We have to take into consideration, if it's an open air building, the weather conditions. Exactly, how come we're actually responding to this emergency, and is it being open air, are we going to have weather issues? And also, is it easily disinfected? And this is important through the whole process. Some of the things to think about are non-porous floors. Are there flood drains as well, which will make it easy to keep the floors clean? We need to think about the floor plan. Is there a single, easily recognized entrance and reception area? Again, we want to make this as easy as we can for families to be able to find the location. We can put up signage and everything and make sure people can get there, but is it going to be fairly easy for them? Can the space be readily divided for the separation of animal types? Some facilities are great for this, and we have enough location, or the space itself is huge enough where that's not a question. But once in a while, we have to use a little smaller facility. So we have to take that into consideration. Does the facility itself allow for a smooth flow of human traffic? So we're not having people all backed up, and especially humans, if they're carrying their pets. All of that is important as well. And is it adjacent to an exercise area for the animals? What are some of the amenities? Are there bathrooms for the shelter staff? As far as the families themselves, in most cases, the bathrooms, that will be taken care of by our partners that are operating the family shelter, but we need to be sure that our staff have bathrooms available. Is there a break area for staff? These events are fairly long hours, but we want our staff to be able to take breaks. Is there a canteen or a storage area for food and drinks? Again, long-term events in most cases, and we need to be able to have canteen services and food and beverages. And we also, if possible, need a quiet office area for meetings or paperwork. Now, again, some of these locations could be in another trailer, in an inflatable tent, in a canopy with walls. There are a lot of other choices depending on the type of the disaster. But again, it's part of our facility and site considerations. Is there hot and cold running water? Running water, that's fairly important. That way we're not having to carry water from long distances. And some of that, it may be cleaning equipment and supplies. And we also have to think about drinking water for animals. We want the animals to always have enough drinking water. And then we have to think about power. You know, is the electric still on in the facility that we're choosing, or are we going to have to use generators? Now, using generators is not out of the question. We have generators that are part of our ministry supplies and equipment, so we can pull generators in. But again, it's just part of the considerations as we're talking about facility, choosing a good facility for a pet shelter. What's the lighting in the facility? You know, is there supplemental lighting? And are we going to have to bring in supplemental lighting? Can we turn them up and down and off? Do we have access? Many facilities, you know, have facility folks that manage the lighting, or in some cases it's computer. So we have to have those discussions at least with the facility liaisons. And is there security lighting? And then are there trash cans inside and out? Now, again, we can also consider that, and we have access to trash cans as part of our emergency services program, so we can actually bring some if they're necessary. But are there cans that are already there inside and out that we're able to use? We want to be thinking about daily cleaning types of things. Paper towels. Are there paper towels there at the facility? We have a number of paper towels, rolls of paper towels that we carry with us, so shouldn't be an issue. But again, we need to be thinking about it. There may be feces, and even though we don't have it listed here, feces or urine, again, the animals are taken out, but there are still cases where it could happen. Towels. Are there towels? Food bags. Where are we going to put the food bags and, you know, keep them from spilling all over and making messes? So again, part of, as we're thinking about the facility and the site, we have to be thinking about those. Is there a dumpster? And is that dumpster outside of the facility? Is there easy access? And do we have access to it? And is it also, if it's outside, is it not too close to the entrance? Now, again, we have to be thinking about that, because it may be something that we have to make a request to those that are responsible for the operation to request a dumpster, because there's going to be quite a need for a dumpster when we're sheltering pets in any facility. So what do you think are some of the potential sites for an emergency pet shelter? I'm sure that you can come up with quite the list. And pretty much any of the things that we talked about in the considerations, if you're thinking about all of those, we're sure that you can probably pick out a fairly good facility to be used for pet shelters. And then one of the things that we may have to do to get started, or maybe this is a situation where there aren't going to be a ton of animals, one of our trailers has been designed to be used as a small pet shelter if it's needed. We can carry other supplies and equipment in it. We try to not carry too much on board that one, so we don't have to unload a lot of stuff to use it as a shelter. But anything that's on it, we can offload it to a canopy or other storage location. Take some cages and kennels and set them up on one side of the trailer. We separate them as necessary. And we also try to think about areas for other pets separated out as possible. And, you know, we have to be really careful. We may not be able to do as much of that as we'd like, but it is a possibility. And this typically will only work in situations where a small number of pets are to be sheltered. It's a great place for us to start, however, and gives us an opportunity to show up at a location and go right to work, even if we're thinking about using another facility. So that finishes this module. We hope that you'll come back and join us for module number 3.